Welcome to Season 4 of the Paleo Post Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things human evolution, ancient art, and the stories that connect us all. I'm Seth Chagi, joined by my fantastic co-hosts Genevieve von Petzinger and Dr. George Nash. This season, we're taking you on a journey across continents and millennia, from the mysteries of rock art to the exciting prospects of my upcoming move to Portugal. We'll be chatting with some incredible guests, diving deep into the art and culture of our ancestors, and exploring the cutting edge of paleoanthropology. So buckle up for this season full of discovery, fresh perspectives, and a few surprises along the way. Hit the subscribe button and join us as we uncover the secrets of our shared past and chart new paths for the future. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Paleo Post Podcast. It's been a while since we have been able to join you, and now we are rejoined by the wonderful George. It has been too long, sir, since we have seen you, and we are so glad to have you back. We have a fun topic for today. I think it is definitely a favorite of many of the viewers, and that is Neanderthal November. So, how are you two?
We were so good. You crawled out of the Indonesian jungle, and now he's hanging out with me in the UAE in Abu Dhabi. And then was going to say, he's going to report in on his Indonesian adventures. But I just wanted to add some fun things to report in on. First of all, I shared it with both of you guys ahead of time, which was that there's a Neanderthal video game that just came out that was inspired. It was actually a developer out of Japan who was in love with like the ancient world, saw my TED talk, got inspired, and actually made an entire video game with my geometric signs being used throughout as clues for this sort of quest style game with a Neanderthal woman. And so yeah, he contacted me, but it's, and showed me the game, and I was absolutely blown away. It was really cool. But it was such a labor of love. Like, it literally took him like 3 years, I think, but it's on Steam now, which is so cool. So if anybody wants to try playing it, it's definitely, you tried, Seth. You took a crack at it. Yeah. So what did you think?
It was a lot of fun, but it was definitely, you had to think through it. It's not a video game that you're just going to pick up and run around chopping people's heads off or something. There's a lot of depth to it, and it's about figuring out your environment and how to use it, and it's pretty fun. If anyone's played like Far Cry Primal or anything, has a taste of that in it, and it's quite fun.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle game basically, which is cool. Yeah, it's definitely it's not like a Candy Crush or something. You're not just matching things. No, but it was really cool because he kept checking with me too to try and make sure that the things he was doing were authentic and were correct. And so it was really cool to kind of watch him as he worked his way through that, and then to see it become a game. So, and you were even impressed. I know you're not a gamer.
Well, I'm afraid the last game I played was Tetris about 35 years ago.
You're like, we're done.
I watched my children play computer games, but it's never really lit my fire, I'm afraid.
That's fair. So yeah, I just wanted to give it a shout out. So it's called iMother. So if anybody wants to try a fun puzzle Paleolithic Neanderthal game, there you go. Who knew, right? So it's perfect.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention too was that we had such a fun time. I think I mentioned that I taught just like an outreach course for the general public with one of the community centers in New York back in September. And we had so much fun that they asked me if I could do it again. And so in January, I'm going to do a course that is specifically on the origins of writing and graphic communication. And so we're actually going to go back and even talk about communication more generally, like thinking about brain structures and, where and how verbal, and then the idea of making marks, and then go all the way forward to some of the stuff I covered in my PhD, which was proto writing. So literally really focus in on the whole development of graphic mark making from its earliest roots, looking at brains, artifacts, and then also other species even a bit as well, which will be fun. So that will be in January, and I'll make sure there's a link to everything. But I also the reason why I wanted to mention it was with, we were just talking about this. So when I do outreach stuff like this, I don't want to get paid for it. I mean, that's not the point of why I'm doing it. So I asked it instead, because they normally do offer what's called like an honorarium, which is kind of like we want to acknowledge your time. So instead of that, I negotiated with them like I did in September, and they were lovely about it, that we're going to give away some classes for free to people instead. So if anybody would love to come and, explore the ancient world of philology, basically, which I've always wanted to do, the study of dead languages and ancient languages, that's basically what we're going to do. But if it, this is a tough time. And so if it's $200, which isn't a lot, but if 200 is a barrier, get in touch with me, and get in touch with Post Podcast, and we'll make sure you can still come. Because I think it's really important. Education shouldn't have barriers. So that was the other thing I wanted to mention. So there we go. And now, Indonesia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, about 3.5 weeks ago, I got on a plane between Manchester, ended up in Jakarta, and then took another plane to Yogyakarta, which is the cultural capital of Java. And we were really, I would describe, if I was going to describe the conference, it was a conference of smiles, because the people in Indonesia are so friendly, so nice. Yeah. And every time you turned away and looked at somebody, there'd be a smile. So we were really had a lovely time being greeted and looked after. The trouble is, it's moped city. So if you really go watch yourself when you're crossing over roads and whatever, there doesn't seem to be any sort of acknowledgement of pedestrians at all. And it's every person for themselves. But anyway, the conference was excellent.
and there was swag.
Oh, yes.
Huh?
Very
nice.
Go.
Book on the history of Indonesia.
Yes.
Yeah. So you gave a paper.
Yeah, I gave a paper and ran a session. So the session I was running, which you'll know about, Seth, is all about archaeoacoustics. And I was working with our colleague, Fernanda Coimbra. And that went down really well, and we had some very, very good papers. And in fact, what's probably a little bit frustrating is we could have done with some of those papers in the book, but the book is now really firmly being edited and sorted out. So, but anyway, a very good conference, and it was so good that we've organised a session for next year in Poland. So the next US IPP conference will be in Poland in 2026, and we've actually put the session abstract in already. So, and the reason why we've done that is because I left everything to the last minute, which is unusual for me, for Indonesia, and almost didn't go. But because the university had some money to take us there, they insisted I went, which was good. I'm really pleased about that. So Poland is on for next year. I expect to see you there giving a paper, which would be nice, on archaeoacoustics. And that brings me on to my other thing, the book. The book is going really, really well. Before I go on to the book, just wanted to mention there was a very, very good paper, and I'm going to try and pursue it deeper if I can, but by a Chinese team who were talking about the idea of Neanderthal a material activity going on in Eastern China. Yeah. But they said afterwards, I spoke to the guys afterwards, a guy called He Li and Fu Chen. And He Li he's the leader of this project. And he said to me, we've got the stuff, but we can't really be definite if it's actually Neanderthal.
Well, that's the big one. This is where they actually thought it was Denisovan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the Denisovan branch.
That was the conclusion, in fact, at the end of the presentation. But it was a very good presentation, and like I say, I'm in contact with them with a view that maybe some collaboration later on at a later stage. So that was good. I mean, the conference was excellent.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, please.
So
please
for the viewers who may not know, so the Li et al. Paper, it's a couple years ago now, but what it was they reported on, not that it's not neat with the fossils and all that, but from a graphic mark point of view, just always my perspective, this is the paper. This was huge. They had 2 bones with intentional engravings on them that date to 120,000. So 120,000 in China, and they were found in association with a site that had robust skulls. So that was kind of how they worded it back in, was 2022? 2021, 2022, I think. Yeah. But I was so excited when I saw that paper, because that was like, for me, that was like, we have Homo sapien, we have Neanderthals, and now we have, so the Denisovans and Neanderthals split around 420,000, I think, based on the genetics from Simodolosoisis anyways. But so the idea that we have all the different branches and making graphic marks is a very intriguing thing unto itself, because it suggests maybe a common ancestor. But I digress. Okay, back to your stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't. Well, one of the main themes of the conference was obviously the rock art that was found in Sulawesi, and the big thing, the big thing coming up was basically conservation. Because if any of you know the site is a beautiful cave site, limestone. It's got the earliest rock art in there made by modern humans, 52,000 or thereabouts, and it's right next door to a cement factory or cement mixing factory, and so basically there's that worry about contamination and whatever. So there's the big discussion points within the conference was this idea about conservation. So that was again interesting. So yeah, and apart from that, I've come back obviously with Jen to do some work here. I'm going back to the UK, but then I'm breathing for about 10 minutes, then on a plane to Finland, where I'm going to be doing examining a PhD. Yeah. I come back, put the Christmas tree up, and then I come and see you. I come and see you on January the 2nd.
Yeah.
January the 2nd.
This is be epic. This is your first time meeting in person, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
Very much looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how's it been for you, Seth? I mean, you're in Portugal now, and I mean, you literally have rock art in your backyard. Like, it's wild, hey?
Yes.
Is it so?
Yes. It's definitely, I mean, coming from, well, I mean, it's safe to say, I think there's rock art everywhere besides Antarctica, probably, and, maybe the Arctic Circle as well. But so coming from the Southwest, there's a lot of indigenous rock art in California and Arizona that I've seen. But that, if I recall, the oldest I've seen there is maybe 6,000 years old. And within a week, we were visiting a site near a river, and the spirals there are Paleolithic. So there was quite an age gap in what I've seen previously, and that was very exciting. But yeah, things have been very exciting here. A little slow, quite frankly, because George had to take everyone with him to Indonesia, like all of the professors, and so we haven't had too many classes. But it's been good getting established and set up, and things are starting in fervor, I would say, tomorrow.
Ooh,
with classes almost every day. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So it's been absolutely wonderful. The people have been very nice, and just being in an atmosphere that there's just a sense of it being so much more ancient, obviously, despite it not necessarily being, because the Earth is the Earth, but it just feels older. And knowing that other species walked here instead of North America, where there was only modern humans, is quite tone shifting if you'd never experienced it before. And it's been a pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm great for you. Yeah, I think, well, it's tough, right? Was you explaining too that our European colleagues don't get it, Seth, which is that for me living on the west coast of Canada, you live in California, like for us to go to what we study is a huge mission. It's extraordinarily expensive. Like it's always limited because, right, you're doing field work, and then you have to go back to where the stuff that you study is not. And certainly in Canada, where I have lived most of my life, that art is not my business, frankly, most of it. And so yeah, it's a very different thing, which is where the European stuff, because of the age, because of the way their cultures have worked there, there's much more of a sense of, well, this is really neat, but nobody actively owns it or practices art with it in the same way.
There's a big gap, isn't
there? So it's more accessible, it's more available, so I think that to be able to spend blocks of time, they don't get it because they can just walk out their back door and go see it, right? But for us, so I was really pleased when you were going to go and do your graduate work in Europe, because I was like, oh, that's going to be such a game changer for you, because it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's awesome. Good. I was just what you were up to. So
of course,
you over here. Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, it's been great. So why don't we get into our first story of today? And we are going to be traveling from Europe, as we were just talking about, to the Middle East, specifically Israel, to Mount Carmel. And we're going to be talking about the remains who, until we get a little deeper into the story, for the time being, are Homo sapien, at Skhul Cave at 140,000 to 100,000 years ago. This site was excavated in the 1930s, and 10 individuals were found. Some of these individuals were intentionally buried very distinctly, which is not uncommon for, of course, for modern humans, even 150,000 years ago. And we have a few of these individuals who have typical variation in modern humans, but there's a few, specifically Skhul 1, which is a child aged 3 to 5 years old, which was recently reanalyzed with CT and 3D reconstructions. And this individual has a mosaic of features. The brain case and the upper part of the skull typically seems to be more Homo sapien. However, the mandible, the jaw, is much more robust than we typically find for modern humans. And it has led some, not all, some anthropologists to believe that this individual, again, 110, 140,000 years ago, is actually a hybrid between modern Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. Now, this is a big claim because we've had these claims before. We've had the Lepedo child, 40,000 years, or no, I think 30,000 years old. And that was kind of disproven with DNA a little practically. And the issue with this individual as well, Skhul 1, is we don't have DNA.
No.
And for us to definitively say this is a Neanderthal modern human hybrid, we will need DNA. So right now we're making all of these judgments based purely on morphology, which is a very tricky business and needs, in my opinion, and many others, much more research to really definitively put a nail in the species coffin. But, and certain individuals like Dr. Chris Stringer and Dr. John Hawks are leaning on the side of it being more modern human, just with some interesting variation. But without the DNA, again, it's not going to be a very conclusive study. And this, if we had the genetic evidence, we could definitely see if it was a Neanderthal sapiens hybrid. We know that Neanderthals and modern Homo sapiens have been interbreeding around 50,000 years ago at the date keeps getting pushed back. But in the Levant, where this took place, well, at first, Neanderthals were thought to be European hominins, and then their range keeps spreading eastwards, and then somewhere in, I want to say, really just when you start getting to the east into Asia and whatnot, we start to see Denisovans instead of Neanderthals. But that's, as we were mentioning earlier, is kind of this third branch of this clade that we have. And so Skhul 1 fits into this story, this kind of messy, interconnected story of human evolution where, frankly, 20 years ago, it might have been dubbed its own species because it looks different. The lumper and splitter debate where we're naming different species just because goodness knows the reasons. Because we can, yes. Versus trying to reconcile these differences into variation that seems appropriate. So whether it's a hybrid or not, this child was buried with care, showing early symbolic behavior that blurred the lines between these human groups. Because as we know, Neanderthals here and there practiced some form of body deposition or burial, if you want to call it that in some cases. But it's really just, and my biggest issue with this is, why does only one show potential hybridization? And then where are the Neanderthal, there's just a lot of missing pieces here. It is next to a
Neanderthals
Neanderthal site, though. It is near a Neanderthal site.
Yeah.
Was
a love child, like some sort of,
been.
a Romeo and Juliet situation.
Exactly. It definitely could have been. And I'm trying to see when the Neanderthal site
because
dated.
Catskill was about 130,000, isn't it? I seem to remember it being about 130.
Working that out, will add, I've worked in Skhul Cave.
We were there together.
Yeah,
George and I were there in 2022.
Yeah, and
then put up a photo.
Yeah, and in 2023 we did sampling there because we found painted imagery in what was the current entrance. But obviously, if anybody's been to Skhul Cave, you'll realise that a good 20 meters of the cave or more
has collapsed.
No, it's been blasted.
Oh, it's
blasted. It was blasted in the 19th century. That's how they found the burial, which you see. And right on the back of the current cave entrance, on the right-hand side, there are lines very much similar to.
We saw those lines when we were there in 2022.
Yeah. Similar to the cave in Gibraltar.
Like hashtag.
Goran's cave, on the floor. But I found red pigment, a not really nice line of red pigment in that cave, and then right next door to it in Jamal Cave, which is the next but one cave along, found loads of finger dots. I mean, five big concentrations.
And that's not even published, though, is it?
Not even published yet. No.
So look at that. The listeners are learning things.
Still working on it.
But I think, Skhul, when you're there, I think I've talked about this before. Like, you saw how excited I was when I was there. I was so excited because I'd read about Skhul and I was so pumped up to actually be there in person. So the thing that caught my attention about this story was the fact that they've done sequencing on some of the humans from Skhul, like some of the Homo sapiens. There is sequencing because they were able to show that was a branch of the family that died off. Like that particular group, like none of us are descended from them. So they're local extinction. And so what I was thinking was, even if they'd interbred with Neanderthals, we wouldn't know in our DNA because we're not related to those particular Homo sapiens either. Like nobody alive today descends from those Homo sapiens. They died off. And then I think that there was another one. Was it in Eastern Europe? We talked about it a few months ago.
It's where cul-de-sac, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember us talking about this a few months ago, where there was a really old interbreeding. They think it was more like around like 180,000 or something. But again, it was from Homo sapiens that didn't actually contribute to our current line. They went locally extinct. So they were none of them are direct ancestors again. So I wonder how many examples there might be that none of them made it out alive, right? And so that there
most
may be
of them, frankly, yeah.
7 billion of us alive today are all descended basically from the L3 haplogroup, right? So we're really closely related. And those guys were from Libya.
Absolutely. I mean, we have modern humans in Africa 250,000 years ago, and we think they left Africa somewhere around 70. So there was a lot probably before that, because Homo erectus has been leaving for 1.5 million years, if not longer. In Georgia, we have older dates. So it's extraordinarily likely that there are many, many Homo sapien groups that died on a local level and never made it this far, just like other species never made it this far. And it's very likely they had variations to adapt to their environment, which might be what we're seeing in this cave and whatnot. I just, off the top of my head, I know for a very long time, the Red Deer Cave people have been a big mystery for a long time in China. And it recently came to light that they were most likely just Homo sapiens. And so there's a lot of Homo sapien groups out there, and they have some variation between them that's quite greater than what we see today, but still same species and whatnot. So it's a very intricate story that seems to continuously grow and become more complicated as time goes on.
I know.
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about this next year and the year after, because of the improvements into hard science and the amount of research that's going on around the world.
Well, and proteomics. So even if they can't get full genetic, I wonder if they could do proteins. But proteins would be complicated. So for the viewers, with that, you can only get to the species level.
Yeah.
So that would be complicated if it was a hybrid, because the protein, like it was a little bit of Neanderthal, but like a Neanderthal grandparent, and like, you know, the rest of it was all Homo sapien. It might still come up as a Homo sapien protein. Like, I don't know how that would work, but I'm going to stick with the Neanderthal and Homo sapien love child. What you get of Mount Carmel.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we have more stories.
I will tell. Well, just one little story about Mount Carmel. When I looked at Jamal Cave, which is the next but one cave along from Skhul Cave, it was used as a show cave, and so you had all these wonderful figures, cavemen and cave women and cave children and dead carcasses. And what was really funny was behind the dried skins, which had been there about 30 odd years or more, was this rock art, these beautiful painted dots, which only they were there as a sort of a spread, but when you used a D-stretch on them, which is for those of you who are listening or watching, it's basically a color algorithm which you use on a computer, and it teases out reds, yellows, and blacks, which the eye can't see sometimes. And that's how I picked it out. It was just random shots at clean surfaces where you had a hint of a spread, and there it was staring me in the face. And again, my colleagues from Haifa University were absolutely gobsmacked when we found it. It was just amazing. And then in the cave on the opposite side of the valley, called Red Cave, the first art team found the first schematic art inside the cave, which is obviously Homo sapien, relatively modern human. But it was, just a remarkable. It's against that old story, and I think we've talked about this. That archaeologists look down on the floor, rock art specialists look at the walls and the ceiling, and that's why we're finding it, because we know where to look, where archaeologists probably don't.
Well,
that just made me think of something that I'd like to pick your brains about briefly. So, chalk on the sidewalk, right? How children do. Has there ever been rock art found on the ground? I know, thinking of like Tandem, Sweden, it's kind of on the ground a little bit, but I mean, like flat on a cave floor, has there been any trace of art found?
Engravings, yeah.
El Castillo. Have you been down there?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's the most extraordinary floor panel. And it's so deep. Like that's the one where you have to fling your leg over the calcite and slide down. It's pretty.
Yeah. Get some insurance.
Yeah. No, we actually joked about that. Everyone was like, does anybody have insurance? And we're like, well, over we go. And it was like, seriously, you slid down, but 15 feet? And then you have to crawl through the thing, which has the spikes. So you feel like you're going through some sort of gladiator thing. But when you get through it, you come out to this extraordinary chamber where the walls are quartz. Like, it's got quartz sparkles in the walls. Like, the whole thing sparkles. And there's this incredible floor where it's hard now, but at the time it would have been softer clay. I think it's actually one of the only scenes I've ever seen in Paleolithic art. There's a horse and what looks like a tent, seriously. And I don't normally say things like that lightly. And then all these stab marks.
Yeah.
It's the most extraordinary thing. And it's probably about 17,000. They think it's Magdalenian, but it could be older.
I'll tell you what's quite worrying, really, because in several of the caves in Creswell Crags, they have their floors cut away, done in the late 19th, early 20th century, and you just have a guess that some of those cave floors could have been engraved, but then we can no longer say that.
Right.
And again, it's something I would be looking at, because if you're crawling through a cave without doing too much contortion of your body, the easiest panel to work on is a cave floor rather than a cave wall or ceiling.
Yeah. Oh, and don't forget too, when we were in southern Jordan, out in Wadi Rum.
Yeah.
That tunnel area, that whole bottom of it was completely
carved. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. Which incidentally is on a film, the June 2.
Yeah, you can actually see the background of June 2.
If any of you viewers or listeners have been watching June 2, look out for a strange looking lump of rock in the middle of the desert
with a hole in it.
A hole in the middle of it.
There's tons of rock art, but probably like 5 or 6
layers. Paintings and engravings, and I did to the ceiling with Jen about 3 or 4 months ago, and I was on my back, and you can see the very, very tiny filiform engravings, which are probably Paleolithic.
Yeah.
So it's really, again, that's another project that's got to be sorted out at some point in the next 100 years.
It's a 2026 project.
Well, yeah, it's probably a 2126.
Oh Lord, I know, right?
Time is not on my side.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think what we've lost again is probably, I mean, the floors are the most likely thing to get covered up with calcite layers, or the environment changes, rivers run through bat poop. Oh my gosh, I've been in caves before. We were just clomping through bat poop, so it could be under the guano. Yeah. But speaking of drawing,
oh my gosh, yeah,
I have Ochre, which is going to segue us to George's story that he wants to talk about, and I have.
Oh, you better tell him where it came from.
Oh,
yeah.
This ochre here is actually from Morocco. Yeah, I was in Morocco. I gotta take a look at it. There you go. So I was there in February with National Geographic, and it was so funny. We were driving down the road, and I saw an ochre outcrop, and I was driving with these lovely local folks, and I was like, "Stop the car!" Them pull the car over to the side of the road, and I leaped out, and we were out in the middle, and I went running to this ochre, and I was so excited. And I was like, "Oh my god, I need a bag!" And I was grabbing ochre, because we were doing some filming, and I needed some ochre. I wanted to show some ochre on camera, and I couldn't find any good outcrops, so that was. But the drivers were like, "What is she doing? Why are we stopping? What is she looking at these rocks for?" And then I found a stone tool near the outcrop, and so then I'm jumping up and down and going, "Oh my god, I found a tool!" It was just the funniest thing, because it was not an area where foreigners are that much to begin with, and then there's the crazy lady with the big hair in the wind screaming about something, and people are like, "We don't know what she's doing." Cars were honking as they drove by. It was a thing. But yes, but the ochre we're talking about today is not from here, but this was the closest example I had. So, sir, you have the floor.
Right, okay. Well, the paper that really interested me today, it's interested me a couple of weeks ago, in fact, I saw it a couple of weeks ago, is that's been some work being done by a team working in Ukraine. What they've been looking at historical material, which is obviously museum conserved. Obviously, they're not there at the moment because of the big problems, as we well know, in Ukraine. But the paper was very, very good in that it provided a very, very good context. And it was basically looking at crayons, and it's something which I'd never thought about before, but it makes sense. And about 30 odd years ago, we all remember about the discovery at Blombus in South Africa, where they found a small chunk, about 10 centimeters long, of hematite, which had actually been engraved. The actual hematite itself had been engraved with a series of hatches lines on two sides of the chunk of hematite. And that was regarded certainly in the British press as the earliest symbolic behaviour by modern humans, around about 70,000 years. And then they found some more stuff as well, which was contemporary. So that was the sort of link. That's what sort of lighted up my green light to come and talk about this. And in particular, what I quite liked about the paper was that the writers or the authors had actually separated a Schalian and Mousterian away from each other, and they looked at 34 different sites in Europe and also in Western Russia, and so very, very nice spread. The majority of them were Mousterian rather than Schalian. I think there's only 3 of the 34 sites which were Schalian, which is old, as we well know, and the Mousterian sites all have a common denominator. The common denominator is that they're using hematite for whatever. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is not found in areas or in situations where there's rock art. So we only assume that they're using it for, if it's symbolic behaviour, for body adornment or for something which is going to be temporary, which is probably rotted away within the archaeological record. But what they did find were these crayons, and these crayons are basically lumps of hematite with wear on the pointed ends. And the wear is really funny because it's at an angle. It's like if you've got a child who's scribbling away with a crayon, the crayon point wears down on one edge. And that's what we got. So that's really interesting. And they put a date to that around about 70,000. So again, older than me.
Yeah, and older than Homo sapiens in the region.
And they were looking at in detail as part of their case study, we're looking at 3 sites in Crimea. So right at the southern bit of Ukraine, which is obviously now in the wrong hands in my view, but that's a political question which I'm not going to go into today. But it just tells you the wealth of potential ancient archaeology that we're seeing within that part of the world. And this coincides with a book that I reviewed on the rock art of Ukraine. And the rock art of Ukraine was Paleolithic. I can't remember who wrote the book, in fact, but it's just been published about 2 years ago. And I did a review on the book. A very good book. In fact, it concentrates on an area in the Donetsk region of Ukraine, again, which is obviously a hotly debated area. I suppose the one thing that Francesco and his team have worked out is that by looking at the material which is in museums and starting to make some inferences about what might be going on with these things, because again, they've given a whole new look about what this stuff might be doing. It's putting life back into the archaeology in a much troubled region of Europe, which is Ukraine. So I was quite heartened to see that paper. And it was only published about 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was really recent.
Yeah. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah. So the thing that always jumped out about me, because having been in a lot of caves, as have you as well, I don't see how a crayon would be useful on most cave walls.
It wouldn't be.
I don't think it would work. No. I don't think they're drawing directly on the walls with a crayon. Just to kind of note that, because ochre is best used this. It's a rock, right?
I'll do the prop.
Yeah, there you go. So put it out singularly, but it's a rock. And again, you can if you grind them together, bits of the rock will come off. It will turn into a powder. But I don't see how that would stick to a cave wall. I don't see how you could draw with it.
You need a binder.
Yeah. So I'm presuming that it's not that they're using the crayon to draw on walls or to draw on a surface. But do you think maybe they're using it to grind it?
It's like a cheese grater.
Yeah. Okay. So cheese grater. And they're making powder.
And then it's being mixed with a binder with things like water, urine, egg yolk.
Yeah.
Semen sometimes. I had to bring it in. I'm sorry.
There goes our rating.
I know, right? With you. If this conversation is edited out, it's got to be said. It's going to be said. But all manner, saliva as well, for example, which is important. I know. Ratings are going to go down now, or they're going to go up. I'll tell you a little.
If we survive the penis feast, George, I don't think anything will tank those ratings after that.
It's all scientific. I'll tell you a story. A long time ago, there's a guy called Tim Taylor who bought a book out called The Prehistory of Sex, and it was the best-selling book for about 2 or 3 years.
I know about this actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
ochre.
Hey, remember,
Crimea.
Remember, Seth. Remember, Seth, you're in Portugal now, not in the US, so you can say what the hell ever you like.
Neanderthals. Come on, George.
Neanderthals, yeah. But anyway, but the point is that I think this stuff is being used. I think it's being grinded, and hence the reason why they've got these flat surfaces on the edges of these so-called crayons.
Yeah.
So, and also, if we wanted to play the art game, I dare say, as you've already said, if you damp the surface of the ochre, you could put it on your skin if you're doing body adornment.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that was my first thing. I just wanted to clarify that too, because I was whenever they've used the words crayon, I'm always like, I mean, maybe if the wall was in general, I'm guessing. So it's not about applying it directly to the wall, but it's suggested as being used in a systematic manner to turn it into, they're processing it. That's usually how it's termed. So I think that it's it's being processed. And the thing is, though, is you wonder that, so first of all, it's a few things. First of all, I wonder the people who initially excavated this, they were archaeologists, probably not rock art people. Which means they may not have looked at the walls. I think this is where Denisova Cave is one where I've always been, because there's so many. We had Denisovans and Neanderthals and Homo sapiens all living there at different points, sometimes together. and they've found lots of ochre in the layers. And so it's even on the walls. I don't think anybody's ever looked. Like, and so this is where, you know, I feel like in a lot of these cases, kind of like you, like literally there was finger dots on the wall of that cave.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
it, you know, and it's not even, there's no shade to anybody. It's just that everybody's focused on their own thing. And if you don't know what to look for, it can actually be hard to spot. Like it might look like a natural deposit or something, right? But I mean, I think so many of this.
Go back to Mount Carmel, which we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
And you've got there very good archaeology. I mean, Dorothy Garrard worked in El Wad, which is the cave between Skhul and Jamil Cave. You know, all the greater and the good have been working there as archaeologists. And it took then by 2020, 2021, 2022, for us to go there and say, we've probably got some rock art here.
Yeah.
And guess what? We found it. We found it in all 3 of the 4 caves.
Isn't that wild? So, I mean, I think that would be my first thought. Second of all, I wanted to just shout out Francesco D'Errico is somebody whose work I have admired for years. He's also the one we should point out who worked at Blombos with Chris Henshelwood, and who was actually part of the initial identification of the markings on that Blombos ochre, the 70,000-year-old one. And I believe they actually have some going back almost 100,000 years now, not with the actual sort of crosses like
these are actually figurative paintings on stone.
But so I mean, I think that Francesco does really cool stuff. He's been associated, his lab out of Bordeaux. I remember him and I met him, the first time I ever met him in person was actually in the Les Easy Museum. We were both there. I was there looking at the Saint-Germain-Teeth, and he was there looking at tools. And he told me then, and I've always remembered it, because he was trying to recruit me for a postdoc in a lovely way for when I was on my PhD. But he was saying that their lab had so many pieces with marks on it that came out of Neanderthal sites. But at that point, they didn't have anybody who'd really started to look through them, because that was probably about 10 years ago now. And he sort of told me about the fact that there was all these pieces with marks on them. And but so over the last while, you probably noticed that his lab is starting to work their way through these pieces. Again, he's a very careful academic, and I know he likes to do a lot of experimental stuff. He likes to do it. He was also the one, of course, who confirmed Gorham's Cave. So he's kind of the guy that you go to if you have marks on things and you want to know if they're intentional, deliberate, how are they made. Francesco's definitely, and that's one of his many specialties. Yeah, and he's really good at it. But so I'm not surprised that they're the ones who are revisiting all of these artifacts that are sitting in museums all over the place, or are sitting in labs, or are sitting in like archaeological collections. And again, that question of you don't find what you're not looking for. So the people bagged and tagged the pieces of hematite, but didn't look to see if they were being used for stuff, because it just probably wasn't even something that was in their in their mind. Right?
This is an interesting thing, because when you see archaeological reports in caves, you always have at the end chapter is miscellaneous.
Yes.
And that's where this stuff goes.
Yeah.
And only because people don't understand it or know what it is. But this has been again an inherent problem with archaeology. If you don't have the right specialists looking at the stuff,
they just might get missed.
It just gets missed. Yeah,
totally. And again, no shade to anybody, because I could step over tools and not even notice. Well, I mean, it was when and you're good at tool finding, but when we were with Yama, who's like an absolute specialist. Oh my gosh, right? Like he was walking like, boop, look at this one, So that was depends who you're working with, right? And what they're doing. But hopefully, I mean, I'm guessing that they're now being very systematic. So I would expect that we would keep finding more and more of this indirect evidence for symbolic behavior at these Neanderthal sites, which just only, I mean, again, hopefully at this point, like most people think Neanderthals made art. I know there's a few grumpy holdouts, but I mean, like I would feel like, is it about, I would say what, 75% of the field at this point must be on Team Neanderthal.
Yeah.
Like, would we say, like, or is it less? Like, is there still people who are grumpily saying they didn't at this point?
I think
there's a few. We know there's a few. And I think there could be some other stuff of,
I know those names of things.
Yeah, we're not going to name names, but I mean, there's a few people I can think of who are who disagree. And again, I mean, science is about, we all have our opinions, and it's important. It's good to have people push back, because it forces you, I think, to be really careful in your argumentation if people are, but But I think at this point, I mean, there's so much evidence for Neanderthals.
Yeah, but there is a problem, isn't it? I think, we've had this discussion before about how the dates for modern humans coming into, or, colonizing the world. When I was an undergraduate, it was 40,000, if we were lucky.
Yeah.
And now we're pushing, the dates much further back. I mean, much further back. And when
it's like 54,000 for that one tooth in France. So suddenly the question, and so the naysayers and the grumpy people, the non-team Neanderthals, and again, a lot of them, I wouldn't say that they're not doing it to be difficult. They're being the devil's advocate in a way, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, if you're going to prove it, you really have to prove it. But I mean, I think that they would lean into that and be like, well, maybe humans were here longer, and therefore they were the ones who did it. But so this is where, though, I think this is actually the perfect segue, though, into the paper that I gave in Indonesia. So I gave a paper in Indonesia. I did it remotely, and George is actually on that paper too. And that was kind of the thing I wanted to finish with, because it will be an article at some point in the future that we can talk about, and a finished study. But right now we're at the beginning of it. But with the paper in Crimea, you'll notice in the title of it, they mentioned that it was associated with the Mokoquian tools.
That's right, yeah.
And so this is something that up until a few years ago, I'd never even heard of Mokoquian. Like, it was a very, so for people who know, it's basically,
please explain it.
Explain this. Okay. So all of the Aurignacian, Gravettian, Solutrean, Magdalenian, all those words that we use to describe groups of people.
Annoyingly.
Actually, I know. Yeah, George is we like to revisit this. This is George's thing. So, but for now, we're just going to roll with it, George. We can rant later, okay? Being done right now is that those caves. No, we actually talked about how to fix it. So there we go. Each of those names of people. So Aurignacian is associated with a group of people that lived at a certain point in time and made a certain type of tool. And then the rock art people have taken those names and then associated the art that matches timing-wise with those people and those tools. And then we talk about the Aurignacian culture. But every single one of those names for different cultures of people during the Upper Paleolithic, it all comes from tools, like from identification of specific changes in tools. And so this is where the Skhul is the site where they first saw like the laurel leaf points, which is a very distinctive type of tool associated with the Solutrean. So just so people understand, this is how it's done, is that we're usually associating, or Moustier is a site where there's more sophisticated types of tools associated with Neanderthals, became the Mousterian. And so Acheulean, like George mentioned, is the older one. Acheulean's also made by Homo erectus, of course. And then you see Neanderthals making what's called Mousterian. And so this is where Mousterian tools, when we're talking about it, that's often, usually they were just sort of all blanketed under that. And you didn't really hear much until maybe at the very end, they would talk about another little group called Chabelperonian, which seemed to have some necklaces and a few, and they were like, oh, but they were just mimicking the humans. So, that's what that was. But in recent years, I've seen more and more talk about this subset of tools out of Mousterian called Mokoquian. And what's really interesting is, of course, now we have the genetics to go with it, right? We have more genetics of different Neanderthals from different parts of Europe. And the Mokoquian tool people seem to have started out as Western European Neanderthals who moved eastwards over time, starting, I think, around 100,000 years ago. Maybe even 120, but certainly somewhere there, they started to move eastwards. And what we see is
why not?
Exactly, because the timing was right, the weather was right, and so they moved. And they brought their Mokoquian tools with them as they moved. They even replaced, and this is, again, we know genetically, that the people who were living in Denisova Cave, say 120, 130,000 years ago, are genetically quite different than the later Neanderthals who came and lived at the same cave and they'd brought with them the genes from Western Europe. And so even there's actually, they're not that closely related, even though they're both Neanderthals. These guys were much more closely related to those Western European ones. The whole point of this is that I started to notice, and this is more just for fun for our viewers and listeners to kind of understand how studies sometimes start, was that I was poking around I was looking at some examples of graphic marks on portable pieces associated with Neanderthals. And I noticed that they kept seeming to be found in sites that also had Makoquian tools. And which is interesting because there are sites in the area that have Mousterian, not Makoquian, and they don't have the graphic marks as much, if at all. And so this was where I started going, I wonder if it was actually the Western European Neanderthals who were making these basically they were doing lots of like parallel lines. There was specific things they were tending to do. And so that was where I got curious about whether they brought that art practice with them when they moved. And art practice is obviously being used very loosely here. So right. Graphic mark practice would be better to say. But that idea of making intentional marks that had nothing to do with butchery, had nothing to do with stone tool sharpening, but they were intentionally making rows of parallel lines, and then other types of marks as well, but like all these linear marks. And they seem to be at the same sites where we're finding the Makoquian tools. And so this is, again, where it's a really interesting question, was that with modern humans, again, exactly as we just explained, different tool types and different art practices are associated with the cultures who are making both. And so this is where right now, and my interest, of course, is I have my typology of geometric signs, which probably has multiple species sitting in it right now. And so the question is that how do you divide it up? How do you split it up? And if we can figure out that there is a culture of Neanderthals who have certain motifs that they like to repeatedly make, then we may be able to actually start splitting things off and actually having a Neanderthal art tradition, which is so cool. Right. And so that's kind of, this was the paper that I presented in Indonesia, was the idea that this is the start of a bigger project we want to do, where we want to actually use the combination of tools and genetics and, fossil remains, and then and then the graphic marks, and see if we can actually find some patterns, and if we can, in fact, identify certain motifs that tend to group with certain clusters of Neanderthal. And the same with when we had Barbara on before, and she was talking about sort of the projected marks. That's something that's found quite heavily in in the Iberian Peninsula, for instance. So maybe the Neanderthals who were there liked to use paint and liked to do projected markings. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, maybe it's been right in front of us the whole time, but we just haven't seen it because we didn't think it was possible. But if Neanderthals are repeatedly using the same marks at multiple sites, like we do have like graphic mark making traditions. You don't need, and that was kind of the point I was making in the paper, was you don't need animals in order for it to count. Right. And I think that this is where with the human Homo sapien, we often use the figurative art because it's beautiful, or it's like whatever is seen to somehow be the pinnacle, and the geometric signs and the other stuff are second-class citizens. But I mean, the geometric signs are just as capable of encoding meaning as a picture of a horse is. And so I think that that was the big question I was kind of challenging in the paper, was we don't need figurative art in order for it to count as being meaningful graphic marks. How's that? There we go. Stepping off soapbox now.
I love that idea so much, frankly. And so I am not a lithics expert by any means. And I just did some research because I was curious on how many complexes, cultures of stone tools there are that are attributed to Neanderthals, whether that be regional variants or transitional periods. And as of now, there's actually 13 that I was able to come up with. And so what you're saying, if I am to understand you correctly, is that when we see art or figurative meaning making and it is being attributed to Neanderthals, this almost singular type of stone tool is being associated with it. We're not seeing, what would you say if you had to throw a number on it? Percentage of, let's say, fits in that.
So this is the
creating. Yeah.
Where okay, see, now you can see I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling up my glass and being serious. Okay. So this is the whole point, is that this is how research designs are born, which is more that I was doing something else. I was actually working on my database stuff, and I started to notice it. It was more that I was like, Makoquian again? Huh. Like, it was more, it started to click in my brain. Now, what did they say? Correlation is not causation.
Causation,
right? So meaning just because things happen in the same time doesn't mean for sure it's the same. So this is where it gets really fun, which is that I would say probably about, because there were some sites where they didn't explain what kind of Neanderthal tools it was as well. Keep that in mind.
Like
Not everyone
in the records, like it's just Neanderthal tools
Yeah,
or
like
whatever.
archaeological record
Okay.
just says Neanderthals, there was some lithics. Oh, and we have some graphic marks on bones. They also seem to have a thing for, was it bovid bones? Like there's a lot of bovid bones. So the materials they're using could also be a repetitive pattern we might be able to pick up as well. So this is where, because you know me, I like patterns, I like large scale projects. So this was more treat this as a starting point. This is more like, and that was kind of the whole point of the paper, was to be a conversation starter, which was, you know, because again, this is a big project. It's across Eurasia. So this is one where, you know, we want more collaborators. It's one as well that with the new integrated artificial intelligence that I'm literally building right now, this is a perfect project because just like what you were talking about, we can start trying to match up. Let's match the genetics. Like, do we have Western European Neanderthal genetics at this site, matching with, you know, marks on bones, McCoqueen tools? Like we almost want to build it up. Think of it as a rope you need to braid, right? And each one is a strand of evidence. And so this is where I would say it seemed like about 60, 70% of the time, they seem to be together. Now, again, at this point, that's just colloquial. Like it's an observation. It's not proven, but this is where it was certainly interesting enough. And I mean, when we talked about it, that it seems like it merits a good study. How's that?
Well, I think it's a very interesting point here because, you know, up until relatively recently, we've relied on maybe one person, i.e. the director of a cave excavation, and he or she has been the demigod, and whatever comes out of their mouth is correct. We now know that's not the case because this is the reason why we've seen a massive shift in the last 10 or 15 years of going from single-authored papers to multi-authored papers, because you're getting all those experts coming in and putting their 10 pennies worth or 10 cents worth into that paper with their own expertise, their specific expertise. And this is something which has been bothering me for a long time, but we have been building a chronology on false pretenses because of what the demigods have been saying. And we know who those people are historically. And I think really in many respects, and we've said this before on the Paleo podcast, is that we are at an interesting turning point, a revolution in many respects of how we are relying on hard science rather than archaeology to give out some of the truths that have been missing. Because the one thing I would like to do, if I had the money and the time and the time to do this, would be to go around and re-look at a lot of the cave sites, which we call Magdalenian, for example, or Solutrean or Gravettian, and see if they actually are. And because I would lay a pound to a penny, they're probably not. They'll probably say much earlier, or maybe say much more recent. But we have based for a long time too much on style. And also, and there's another interesting point about what you've been talking about, Jen, is that when we start to talk about, you know, late Neanderthal, we're talking about an expanse of maybe 40, 50, 60,000 years, you know. And if you look at our own history, you know, Homo sapien history, there's been great change. We've gone from stone to rocket and landing on the moon. And that's the point. The point is that, you know, it's very difficult to compartmentalize some of the archaeology that we've looked at in the past. Say it's Mousterian, it's Acheulean, or it's Neanderthal, or it's Homo erectus. These are massive expanses of time, and you know we've got to start rethinking about how we pull this into a more tighter time span.
Yeah, and being able to be more specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I think that's where again the key is to be more interdisciplinary, I think, as well. And then that way, when you're able to stack archaeology, you know, bioanth, genetics, like art, like all of it together, palynology, like anything and everything, all of the stuff that you can do, I think you can start to build a more complete picture of the world.
Exactly.
And that way, I think we can start to get a handle on it. Because right now, again, it's always like these little glimpses, but definitely I would bet that we have in the future, there may very well be some sort of graphic mark typology for the Makokoan culture. So there we go. That would be, if I was going to take a guess, I would say I think in the future that might be a thing. But stay tuned, because now we have to put the study together and go check it out. Yay, science!
Which is the fun part, of course.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I love it.
It's, I would assume, far, far too early to make any educated guesses on this. But since this stone tool industry is central to Eastern Europe, is there anything within that environmental niche that would have potentially encouraged this behavior more than in other areas?
Well, this is the fun part, okay? Mikok is a French site. Some of the oldest Makokoan comes from France. And then it moves. And so this is where, in the Dordogne region of France, there is all these incredibly old cupels, like engraved. So they're like engraved dots, basically. There's incredibly old cupels there. Like that's what I mean. There's already, and one of them, for instance, is a burial slab with a female child, like a Neanderthal. And it's 70,000. And there is a slab engraved with cupels inside the burial with the Neanderthal child.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's one of the ones where, unless a Homo sapiens snuck in and stuck a slab in there, I mean, Neanderthals made cupel marks intentionally and stuck it in there. And there's that incredible piece in the Santander Museum, which I first saw back in 2016. When I was there, I was filming with Nat Geo and then also with Tokyo Broadcasting, and we were in the museum, and I almost lost my mind because I went to the little side room.
That's right.
And there's this little stone plaque on the wall there. There's 4 carefully engraved dots in a row with one underneath it, and it's 70,000 years old. It's from El Castillo. It's from an archaeological layer. Like, it's well dated. It's Neanderthals were making rows of dots 70,000 years ago. And then we have the cupels not very far away. The Dordogne not that far. And so it's like, again, that's another culture group that might be something that needs exploring as to, are there the people who like to make the dots and there are other people who like to make the lines? Like, it's just fascinating because
regional variations,
which we see with Homo sapiens. So why would you not have it with Neanderthals?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so this is where I feel like we're actually at a really exciting starting point. Like, that's what I mean. I think it could be a really fun study to and then with the work Bar's doing as well with Barbara, that idea of all those projected marks. A lot of those projected marks are probably 60,000 plus if they're from the same. A lot of them are from the same sort of layering as where they were getting the dates from the Spanish sites. So, you know,
and the big $64,000 question is, who's teaching who?
I know I love that too. Well, you know, again, so far in Africa, we will say in Africa to date, we have no hands.
Yeah.
And yet we have hands in Europe that are over 60,000 years old. Like
Maltraveso, yeah.
Right? Like, who taught who what? George isn't joking. We've had this conversation. This is the first time we've ever had it while being recorded.
How old are the hands in Australia? Because I know there's hands there.
That's the question.
40, 50,000.
But some could be 60 or 70. I mean, maybe 60, because I think people arrive. So that's the question, though. We know Neanderthals and humans. Now we're circling back to school, and we're circling back to the Middle East. We know humans and Neanderthals interbred. What if, like, this is one of the things that I love so much about the project I'm working on now, because this is where we're working at the global scale now. That's actually what we're working towards, is trying to figure out those big patterns. Where were things invented for the first time? Who invented them? Who taught who? How did they move around? And so, I mean, I think that's the big question, is that at the moment, the absolute oldest hands in the world are sitting in Spain, and they're associated with Neanderthals. So, you know, I'm again, we need to learn more. But isn't that a great question?
I'm just thinking about Shanadar in northern Iraq.
Yeah,
there's symbolic behavior going on there.
Tons.
And again, you know, it's just that there's got to be, you know, that contact. And I said at a very early stage in one of the first episodes I got involved with you and Seth, was that 50,000 is I think is a key time span of 50,000 years ago, where we start to see this interaction between modern humans and Neanderthals. And I'm sure I wouldn't want to put my mortgage on it, but I would probably suggest that someone is influencing someone else. It's either Homo sapiens to Neanderthals or Neanderthals Homo sapiens. I think it's probably the latter rather than the former.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's so interesting is, again, we have Denisovans going back to, like, this episode really tied together nicely. Like the Denisovans, we have them making marks at 120,000 in China. We have Neanderthals making marks at 100,000 plus, because we've got a couple. We can put some photos up for people, but like there's that bone out of Poland now, which is 120,000 and associated with Makokian tools, just for the record. And so we've got them doing, and then we have Homo sapien doing things down in, say, Blombos, are at 100. So we've got, I think that there's a common ancestor, is I think what it is.
Yeah, but there's a break, isn't there, between Southern Africa and, say, the Middle East. We know that they're moving northwards along the rift, probably the Eastern Rift Valley, into across the Red Sea and then into Arabia. But there seems to be a break. I mean, I don't see much Middle Paleolithic or early Upper Paleolithic rock art occurring within that expansive landscape between South Africa and Europe and East and Western Asia.
But here's the question: how many people have looked?
I definitely don't know if I would contest that at this moment, but my big thing with this, and it's the same dilemma that we find in paleoanthropology, is Africa is massive. I mean, compared to how big Europe is, combined with the Middle East, and comparatively, unless I'm mistaken, there's a grave lack of funding when it comes to Africa in almost all realms of archaeology and history, and so much of that funding starts in Europe and ends in Europe. So I think a lot more work needs to be done on the African continent, because I think there could be a lot there that isn't well documented. But I think at least what I know of is probably 25,000 and onwards, so it's not super old. I mean, it's old, obviously, but not very old.
There's Namibia. There's the one piece. But that's way over on the southwest.
Yeah.
Now I just connected with Curtis Marion, who is from Pinnacle Point, because of course they've got ochre there going back like 160,000 years, including some of it being heat treated. And so I actually asked him about whether they were using de-stretch or not. Because again,
she wasn't.
No, but so we're gonna have a chat. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. Was my response. Was the vibe I got? But we'll see. And I can't wait to talk to him. But again, like, it's exactly what Seth's saying. I mean, we've said this so many times, right? Which is that the fact that those parts of the map are blank right now, it's not because they're blank.
Because someone's looking.
It's because it has not been identified, it has not been documented. And again, this is no slam on anybody from that part of the world, because there are people who are probably toiling away with no funding and no recognition, maybe not able to publish in English, which can be another barrier. And who do have rock art that they would love to tell people about, or they don't have the money or the funding to be able to do the dates to really know. Or
they are blinkered into looking at rock art, which is figurative and dates from a few years ago to a couple of thousand years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that this is literally one of the points of the project that we're doing now, the big one, which is Leokara, which is the entire point is to start filling in the blanks on the map. And so, I mean, because I would argue that, I mean, I'm fascinated by the question of whether can we find any rock art in Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, because that's where the L3 haplogroup comes from. That would answer a lot of questions if we could find like Middle Paleolithic rock art there, or like Twin Rivers in Zambia. I know a lady who's a TED fellow. I am, and Twin Rivers has tons of ochre going back almost 300,000 years. I'd like to jump down to Twin Rivers and take a look in those caves. Because again, we won't know until we go look, right?
Is that where that 700,000-year-old wooden structure is, or is that's Twin Falls, isn't it?
Yeah. That's right.
No, it's 450,000 for the wooden structure that
something. They're like Lincoln logs.
That's not very far from where Twin Rivers is. So again, if you have people making like linked together Lincoln logs, like 500,000 years ago, maybe they were putting marks on cave walls. We don't know. All right. And so I think that's where, I mean, sure, just what you're saying is it's a complete blank spot right now, but I think it's blank just because it hasn't been documented in a way that the West knows of. I mean, we have a meeting with a lovely fellow on Tuesday morning who contacted me, who works in northern Thailand. And there's some fascinating rock art there, right? So this is, again, where George and I are going to have a chat with him. But it's like, it's everywhere. Like, and so it's the pockets, as always, it's the pockets where, you know, people have, the funding existed, the peace exists, because peace is a problem too, right? Like, if it's not peaceful, it's really difficult to do any work there, right? And so, I mean, I think that's where I would love to see some of these new areas of the world be opened up and be peaceful enough that we can start working, supporting people working in those areas ourselves, and seeing those places start to join the rest of us when it comes to understanding what's really there. Because I mean, the Crimean, if nothing else, it shows as well that there's been stuff sitting there that could be very helpful for better understanding Neanderthals and symbolic behavior, and it just hadn't really been looked at before, right? So I mean, I'm so excited about the future.
Well, the great one-liner, I suppose, to end this is to say that we're all human. And to get rid of the politics. We're all human. And we have the urge to make some form of marking, be it political, religious, or whatever, on a cave wall, or on a bit of wood, or on a bit of leather. And I think that's something we should not ignore.
No. And that far back. I mean, that far back, we were all like cousins. Like, it was like there was just humans. There was no, like, the closest thing was these guys make slightly different tools than us, but like the level of difference between people was very, very small. And I mean, I think this is where, again, that there probably really are these great art traditions that probably span from between species, between cultures, between all of those things. And I mean, I think it's one of the things I love so much about it is that what we're doing, I mean, it belongs to everybody, right? That's why we do the show, right? Is to be able to share what our collective ancestors were up to, right? So this always makes me so happy. This is like my favorite time when we get to do this.
Yes, and I think with that, as George mentioned, that is a great place. Yes, that's a great place for us to end this episode. We've covered a lot. Of course, it's Neanderthal November, so we mainly talked about Neanderthals, and who would want to do that anyway? And there's a lot more to follow, and we're very excited for the rest of the season and more seasons to come, so stay tuned. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not already. The channel is about to hit some milestones, so that's pretty exciting. Wouldn't be here without you guys, so appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Hey,
bye.
Thanks for hanging out. Neanderthals.